I'm going to
there we
sleep
are.
now.
An error occurred. Wait a moment and try again. But
a new error in aviation occurred.
We could be live somewhere, but not somewhere else. Oh no. All right, well, let's try live again. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. I've started early because Bruce just said something really well. I think I've started. I don't know. Put something in the comments if you are here early. But Bruce, just if you can remember that long ago now, see if you can. What did you just say about sliding stuff past the politicians?
What? Yeah. I've done a video on this myself, haven't put it up yet, but basically we've got two stages that this proposed regulations in the USA have to go through. And I think we might be shooting ourselves in the foot a little, because at the moment, the way the NPRM is worded by the FAA, I don't think any politician would pass it into effect because it kills the hobby. This sort of limited number of freers and no new ones coming out ever, it kills the hobby. And there's a very good case to argue to politicians, no, this would kill the hobby, it's not allowable. And of course, then the politicians would say, no, I'm sorry, your NPRM is not acceptable, we're not going to make it into rules, into law. So I'm thinking, we don't want the FAA changing this. If the FAA turn around and say, well, okay, we're going to allocate new freers every 5 years, therefore the hobby is safe for eternity, the politicians are more likely to say, yeah, okay, that's fair, put the whole thing through. So you're going to lose a whole lot of stuff because the FAA would just tweak it enough to slide it past the politicians. I actually tend to think it's better just to leave it as it is, so the politicians go, get out of here, throw this out, we're not having this. Because then every aspect of the NPRM is thrown out, not just the little bit. So you're not going to be hit with that annual tax for your internet connection, for your USS. All those things will be thrown out along with the death of the hobby. So, but if they tweak it a bit, then it'll slide past the politicians and you still got all those other problems. So I think people have jumped the gun a bit. And that's why I said, don't make a submission yet. I think all those submissions are only going to harm the potential for getting the politicians to throw this out.
Yeah, it's and sorry if you're joining us earlier. You should know we sometimes start early because when we talk before we start, and very often it's really interesting. And then I'm kicking myself that I haven't clicked the start, but because that's it. Bruce only says one interesting thing an hour, and that's it. So you've got to try and get it one way.
One a day. Yeah.
One a day. Oh, one a day. Well, we're waiting for Dr. Greg, who's going to tell us about Sensor Showdown, the helicopter crash, the big helicopter crash, which those evil drones today, the evil drones have been swarming the site, and the FAA have had to put in a very unusual bit of airspace. It's never ever been done before, or has it been done every single time there's a crash like this? I wonder. What can we? And I see DJI have sort of put out that the NTSB are actually using one of their bits of kit in order to make a map of the crash site. So one side of the coin is from the press, there's evil drones, and the second side is, well, actually that's what's being used to map the site. Where do we go with that? Is it down to the Lake of Fear? What are we going to say about that helicopter crash?
Well, I'm going to say we're repeatedly told by regulators that drones are more dangerous because pilots have skin in the game. Well, that pilot made some really bad decisions, and it proves that having skin in the game does not make it safer.
It's a horrible one, isn't it? For me, it's, you sort of look at it, and for me, you just think about the kids. Okay, adults die all the time, and it's the kids bit, and you see about the drone aspect, and I hope no one's flying there who shouldn't be. You'd hope anyone would have enough sense to steer clear, but. Able to get in any other way as well.
It's must be very cold in England. You froze.
Yeah, I'm on hotel Wi-Fi, sorry. Yeah, and at the end of the day, drones are an important tool in aircraft investigation now, and they allow them to get quick aerial data that they weren't able to do before. Usually, they'd have to wait until the ground was fairly cleared to bring in low-flying choppers and stuff like that, whereas now they can put a drone in the air and get an instant overview of what's going on. So it is an important part of any investigation, but on the flip side, you also don't want it to become a spectator area either, and you'd hope people would steer clear.
Yeah, we have paparazzi, of course, they're always a big problem. Now paparazzi have got drones, but I don't think we can use that as justification for restricting the ownership, use, or whatever of drones, because we don't restrict cameras just because paparazzi go with long lenses and film, starlets sunbathing on a beach somewhere.
Well, that's your weekend explained.
Yeah.
As Wavy Davy says, scud running, absolutely avoidable incident or accident. And I see there's some terrible reporting around this, calling special VFR a super special clearance. It's really hard to get. It's not at all. It's just some dreadful, terrible incident, terrible thing, and utterly avoidable. Utterly avoidable. No GA below 2K, get them up and away, get them safe. I've said it before.
You don't want to leverage someone else's suffering for gain, but it also points to the fact that the FAA has much bigger problems than drones to deal with, and they're not adequately addressing the risks associated with manned aviation. How many people have died needlessly in the past 12 months because the FAA has dropped the ball?
Well, do we know, was it 2 crew or was it single crew, that helicopter?
I don't know. I've not seen that mentioned. I thought I've only heard one pilot's name being mentioned.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, that should have been a 2 crew big IFR auto-piloted machine. It should have been, not impossible to crash, but fairly impossible to get into that position. Anyway, Greg, we started early. Good day to you, sir.
I know you guys did. Sorry about that. I'm usually Johnny on the spot.
No. It's just Bruce said his one thing for the year that was cool. So I had to quickly go live whilst we were doing it. And I know you were in a hurry as well. So let's jump straight to you.
Sure.
And then we'll go back to our normal rant. Sensor Showdown.
Sensorshowdown.com. Yeah. So the past 2 years I've been running boot camps around agricultural drones and plant mapping. And one of the biggest questions I just keep getting asked is, hey, how do I make sense of which cameras are on the market for plant mapping, specifically for agriculture, but it could be other types of land management. And there's a range of these cameras that are coming out all the time. And so I created this free course as a resource that says, okay, here's your different options on the market. I'm fairly diplomatic. I don't take a side, but I just want people to say, hey, you're doing all this Googling. Let me just put it in one place for you. You can run through all the different cameras. I add in some notes too about, hey, what are things to think about when you're choosing a multispectral camera? Well, it's not just the camera, but what are you going to mount it on? And how much data are you going to collect? And then where are you going to take the photos and what are you going to process it in? Because different cameras work with different software. And so thinking about what's the camera, what's the drone, and what's the software. Okay, here's your options that are out there that are the major players on the market. And if they want to pay for 12 hours of training, they can take a paid online course that we offer. So it is a bit of a lead magnet to say, like, well, I'll teach you how to do this, but if you don't care, at least here what your options are, and it's totally free. So that's kind of where I came up with the farm drone sensor showdown. But I do kind of reframe some of my biases towards one sensor versus another. I will say that right now I'm beating my head against the wall with, I call it the DJI Enterprise Purgatory for support. And so I'm in purgatory right now with the new DJI multispectral. Like, I'm having big problems with how they tag the imagery with the geotag, and the information is messed up. And I'm going back and forth with Asia because local support has no idea what to do with this camera and this particular sensor. And it costs that, $9,000 for an RTK setup. So I think it goes to show with these cameras, like, you can't just build hardware and not be able to get answers about, like, what does all this stuff mean? How am I supposed to interpret it? If I run into problems, who am I going to ask? Well, you can't just build a hardware and throw it out there. And especially with plant mapping and things, you're going to run into issues. What do I do with corn versus vineyards versus whatever? So,
well, that was kind of going to be one of my questions. Is it necessarily the best lens, the best this, the best that, or is it the best total package of software that a particular thing supports?
For me, it's like, what works? And if you're just trying to, for example, like mapping wheat fields, like, color imagery looks perfect and you can colorize it and bring out the different greens, but it's wheat. Like, if it's green, it's good. If it's yellowing, well, there's an issue there. Do I need radiometric accuracy for scouting and wheat? No. Phantom 4 Pro, it looks great. Using drone deploy in a real-time map on my phone, that looks great, and it's something I can use while I'm out in the field. Is it scientific? No, but it's something that anybody can use, and it's the drone they already have. Okay, you're doing test plots and breeding trials, and you want to do it through time and detect change or disease outbreak or something. Okay, then it's like, it's similar to like thermal.
Oh, is it just you and me, Bruce? Yeah,
It's the Northern Hemisphere winter strikes again.
Oh, I'm still here.
It does it. And there we are. Oh, that was very interesting, Dr. Greg. Actually, as ever, I haven't prepared a link to his course. It's a free course. We did a story on it last week. Let's see if I can find it, and we'll put it up there. I should think you probably wanted to hear more about that that DJI sensor there, Ian, and not working as well as he thought.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is a lot of the problem with this stuff, is that you're trying to find someone at times to deal with specifically. I don't know anyone personally who's used the multispectral version, the P4 Pro. Again, it's getting the output you want. Again, it's still very early days because there's no standard in this as such, is there, in the sense of, everyone's producing their bit. Oh, here he comes.
Well, maybe. Oh, well, then again, maybe not.
He has no lights.
Yeah, it's obviously darkness. Oh, hello, CQDX.
EX.
Oh, there he is. Are you back?
No. Oh, we've lost him. Yeah,
third world nations, Third world nations and their internet.
Because obviously Parrot have got their sensors, which they've been pushing, in their little ones as well, which they're making now for years, aren't they?
Well, that's what Greg was, the man at Parrot, doing exactly that. That was his previous life. But, oh no, I think he's gone again, isn't he? That's just going awfully well.
Maybe he's turned off his camera to get more bandwidth for his audio.
Yes, maybe. Try talking, Greg. You're still there. Oh, no.
He was going well as well. He didn't have an issue, did he? He was flying, and then suddenly it fell off the cliff.
Yeah. Well, careful what you say now. It's a bit of a, he's trying to get
these aviation metaphors. What?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. That was just a terrible.
Which country is Greg in?
He's in Kyrgyzstan or something, where the internet's terrible.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, mate.
I know. I'm stuck in WeWork. I'm turning my camera off just in case.
Yeah, good plan. That's a good plan. What did we just say? We just said, is there any sort of standard for these cameras yet that you can work to?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can use things like calibration panels, or it really takes an academic exercise to measure accuracy. You need a spectrometer to know how much reflectance is really coming off of a plant, and how does that line up with your camera. Just like with thermal data, you can go take a temperature and say, okay, well, that's the same temperature in my camera that it's reading. But most people aren't going to do that. My concern is that you have hardware resellers selling this stuff just to make money, and then nobody knows what to do with the data, and you're trying to sell it to small businesses and farmers and things. And it's not just about the drone and the capture, it's the analytics. Everyone wants to know, hey, I have a wheat field or a cornfield or a vineyard. How do I extract value out of this information? And a lot of times the answer is, I don't know. Here's 15 map layers. Can't you see you're going to make money, or you're going to improve yield or whatever. And it's like, well, maybe, but you probably could have done that with a Mavic,
So what are the biggest issues you're coming across? You started to mention on you are having issues with the P4 Pro multi-spectral. What are the sort of problems you're having with the hardware?
Yeah, right now it's how they write the EXIF data on the photos is not lining. And I'm at the point where supposedly I can update. It's a firmware issue. I update the firmware on the drone, but the firmware is not updating on the camera. And so DJI is having me re-up firmware on the drone, but I asked them, okay, how do I make sure that the firmware is updated? And the answer is, well, send us some photos and we'll tell you like yourself. It's a black box. And so usually with these sensors, I can call the companies and they know, as the nerdy small influencer that I am, like at least they know I'm trying to figure this stuff out and explain it to people. But I don't know who to call in Shenzhen, you know. And you have to talk to an engineer. Like you can't talk to a salesperson. You need to know the two people working on it that are really going to tell you what the technical issue is. So otherwise, it flies great and it's hopefully easy to map, just like a Phantom. But if the data aren't great, then I don't know. I don't know what to do. So.
Yeah, well, you are my go-to man about these sort of sensors. I wouldn't say you're a nerdy and inconsequential influencer in this world. You are the only influencer. you are the one.
They say that niches make riches, but so far I'm just in the niche part of that. That's
yeah. Well, join the rest of us in the bottom of the ditch. So there's no definitive winner or loser then, or ones to avoid in your.
So it depends on, if you are an academic and a researcher, I would go with MicaSense because they're more open in terms of how they process the data, and they have a GitHub site for calibrating all the imagery yourself. And that is a value to researchers who don't just want a black box on how you use they want all the access to all the information there. There are other sensors that have custom analytics, like Slant Range will do plant counts, but just with their sensor. If you like the analytics of Centera and it works for you, well, then that works, but you're locked into that workflow. And we're so early in the game, like I want the flexibility to use whatever software I want and whatever tools. I want to mix and match. I don't want to just use one person.
Surely we're not early in the game. Surely every farmer in America's got a drone now, and they're all making millions and millions of extra dollars because of that. That's what we were told.
I think in round 2 now of farm drones, I think we're getting closer to extracting the answers rather than 15 map layers. And so that's things like plant counting. If we can automate that or measure plant size and measure growth rates automatically, well, that's an answer. Like you have this number of plants here and this number of that. It's different than it's red pixels here and green pixels there. And I don't know what that means for nitrogen. Aerobotics, I think, is doing a really good job out of South Africa in terms of visualizing the data and giving you those answers. And a lot of this is in beautiful UX. You know, how you also can't be very complicated because it needs to work on my phone and be beautiful and condense complex information down to. And they've done a good job of that for orchards and citrus and things like that. So.
Well, the farmer at the end of the day, he doesn't care how he gets the data. He just needs to know is either 7 or 4 or what, you know, some
high, medium, and low. You know, is that you need to know. You know, or maybe 5 category. You know, medium high would be good too. But they have so much other stuff to do. They're not going to sit and like dive into it and nerd out on it because you know the pump broke on the West 40 or whatever. I mean, it's just one piece of the puzzle.
Yes. Well, I think that's always been the problem with it. Dare I say, presented in a Silicon Valley manner. Here you are. Here's the data. We're going to save the world with it. And they're not from people in the farming world. That's what I should have said. You know, it's tech nerds, and the farmers go, yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, it is very difficult to, if you look in the literature in the drone industry and marketing, it's very difficult to put a dollar value on the return on investment with drone data because you have to wait till the end of the growing season and sell it all and then decide if you did things differently, how much would that have cost? The only difference, the main difference I see is like, let's say a company gives you bad rootstock and you need to replant. Well, I can give you a 99% accurate of like exactly how much they owe you on that insurance claim or how much bad material they gave you. That's a perfect example, but that's rare. That's not just everyday management. Because often the field, that's the crappy area of the field is the historically crappy area of the field. and has been for the last 50 years because it's clay, you know. So what are you going to do about that? Nothing. It's just going to be clay, you know. So
well, that's it. That's the farmer will know. He say, yeah, we buried the tractor down there, or that's where Dad did whatever, you know.
Yeah, totally.
Standing people, I've seen people give this demos to farmers, and that's exactly what happens when somebody says, "Hey, look at this! You've this, and this." Yeah, that's where the dead cows are, and whatever. You know, it's like, yeah, we know why that's like that.
So I love recommending color imagery first. Like, get out there with a Mavic or a Phantom. If you haven't used Pix4D React yet, it's for public safety, but it'll stitch it super fast into a 2D map for like $40 a month or something ridiculous. And I can 50% overlap, so I can fly 150 acres on a battery really fast and stitch it offline for $40. Try that, like hack it and see if it works, you know, before you go spend $5,000 on a camera. Just use the drone you got. But that's me being practical, and maybe that's my problem.
Well, I'm beginning to see a bit of a resurgence in posts in the socials of people saying, well, I want to get into farm mapping now. Which sensor should I buy? And they've never been on a farm, you know. So
totally.
it's like, no, that's not how it works. So if you are that person that wants to buy that sensor, Dr. Greg has the course for you. Now I've put the link in there. Is that course going to be there forever?
Yeah, it's a perpetuous course, and our professional course. I mean, I spent 2 years building the Photomappers course as well, and I do feel confident that says, look, I can get a drone service provider up to date to get good quality imagery, but then you need premise about how to interpret it. I can get you to collect it correctly and process it correctly. But how much nitrogen you should add, it's always going to take an agronomist. So.
Okay. And where do you see the state of the farm drone market? Of course, you've got to say positive things now, haven't you?
So my hope, like, look at Pix4D Fields. It's ultra rapid offline processing. I can process 3,000 multispectral photos in 10 minutes and have a map. And if I can add some basic, like, here's the zones, or here's some plant counting, or I don't know what this weird area of the field is, but let me see every other place in the field that looks like this. Those tools are here, and they're becoming more affordable. And the Phantom 4 multi-spec of some of these platforms, like, it'll solve, hey, I'm zip tying the camera still. It's 2020, and I'm still zip tying cameras on the bottom of drones. If we can make the workflow easier, then we can build in the analytics and the tools. But it's still really like, are you doing test plots and research and breeding trials, or are you doing a PhD or a master's degree? Then a drone is really useful. Are you doing production level field stuff? Well, I just use the drone for some video scouting or some still photos and call it good. You know, that's kind of where we're at the two ends, the high end and the low end.
It's interesting stuff. I'm still, well, it will have a place in the future, but certainly it got off to the wrong start with all the crazy predictions that were out there a couple of years ago. It's not helped. I mean,
what we really need is all the universities and agriculture to take the local crops and plant them in a grid that's a calibration panel for your local area, and you will know what the drone imagery means. Like, I just need you to plant your wheat varieties out with different nutrient levels and different water, or whatever your issues are, and let me fly the drone every 3 months over it, and then you can calibrate your imagery to the local farms, and that would be useful.
There's quite an interesting question come up from Tori Crash in the comments. Any info on avalanche mapping or mapping snowy area with Mavic to extract info from white color? I should imagine that's an adjacent to impossible task, but you're the man to ask.
Yeah, I usually, for ice mapping, I recommend, so I have folks I work with for Antarctica and other places. What they end up doing is red Kool-Aid. So you can, like, spray red Kool-Aid X's, and it'll help pull the projects together a little better. Not pure white, right? It's kind of dirty. But that, and having calibration targets that or targets that are out there of known distances above the snow, so that you can measure the difference in depth and have a known reference point, also is useful. But you can definitely use red Kool-Aid.
And so does it. I mean, to me, it seems like an almost impossible task, just mapping white. So is it doable? Is it possible? Is it useful?
Yeah, not necessarily with RGB, but like Microsense did a new 10-band camera that has more in the blue reflectance. And so if you don't look purely at the color reflectance, you get more at some of those depths. But it does take known reference points to measure a relative, an absolute difference versus a relative difference. It's hard, but it's not impossible.
And then that can be pulled into Pix4D and stuff like that. And how would you find a body, I wonder, in an avalanche? Look for a dip or look for...
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you could find a body. I thought you just meant changes in depth and things like that. Usually you're taking the difference between two different digital surface models. So you create one and the next, and you take a difference between those two surfaces. But I don't know if you could find a body that would be.
But I think I just added to that. A few teaspoons of potassium permanganate would be great. Is that your drinks order, Bruce? I'm not quite understanding why you want that.
If you want to colour the snow, there's nothing better than a few teaspoons. You can drop it from the drone, actually, and it would make really violent colour. Don't requires a tiny amount.
Take that spray drone. You could take the spray drone out there. That's probably a good use of a spray drone, actually. So, hey, I got to run, guys, but I appreciate the time on here. Sensorshowdown.com. You can totally take it for free and stop asking me which sensor is out there and just what it means.
All right, Greg. You look after yourself. Well done, everything you're doing. We'll speak to you again. Take care. Right, he's gone now. And hello, Nicola. How are you? Yeah, I see you posted a video today, didn't you?
Yeah. Finally, after 2 months of silence, it finally happened.
And how did you find that radio device?
It just turned up in the mail.
Yeah, shocking.
That's how it works in our world.
Stuff just arrives via mail. It's
Doesn't it?
uncanny. So weird. Now, I'm actually rather happy with it. Apart from a few snags with the Bluetooth module, which has been dodgy, hasn't worked for everybody. My friend has one, and he says that his works on every computer he tries it on every phone he tries to connect it to. Mine doesn't even want to register as a virtual COM port or something. And I actually bought another one for another friend of mine, and his registers as a virtual COM port but doesn't connect at all. So we both have to use USB cables. I don't mind, actually, because I don't move around too much when flying. I just sit in front of the monitor. But other than that, getting the telemetry working from a Pixhawk or any RGU pilot enabled model, not that difficult once you get an idea of what you have to do. Getting there is a bit hazy, so hence why I'm going to be doing a second video trying to explain my process, and hopefully that would work for someone else. Setup is pretty simple. You can just run it out of the box, just bind the things. They're set up for maximum output, so you're gonna get your range even without going through the software, through a computer, although you can tweak a few things if you do that, but it's gonna work either way, and it does work good. I am pretty happy about that.
And have you put any high gain antennas, or just like
no, the stock ones, whatever it came with? I'm usually not the one to rush into high gain antennas and all that stuff. I actually like to abuse what the manufacturer has provided, and for the most part, it has worked pretty well, because I've been doing the same thing with the FR Sky R9 system, and every single receiver that I have, including the transmitter module, are with stock antennas, and they've been absolutely perfect which has not been the experience of a lot of other people. So I've no idea what that can be attributed to exactly, but it's a fact. I've got like, I don't know if there are hundreds, but close to flights with the R9 system, and I've not once had like a low signal at close distance. Usually, well, I don't think I've ever had one, because even at what I'm running at 200 milliwatts, I'm still going out over 20 kilometers. So
over there in the land of no holes. Now, Bruce,
same goes actually the same goes for the Dragon Link. As you saw in the video, that 32-kilometer flight was mostly done on the 100 milliwatt setting. And maybe when I was getting like over 25, 26 kilometers, RSSI dropped down to about 20, maybe 30%, and I then flicked the switch to the 300 milliwatt position, and the rest of the flight was on that one.
Well, I've got a bit of experience with those, and just like you, the Bluetooth is always a drama. It's not great, that part of it. But as for range and stuff like that, we can't fault it. It's very, very, very good, I've been told. It's very, very good and very reliable.
That's why they should use Bluetooth for remote ID, because no one will be able to connect to the drone.
Well, yeah, it's funny how people are waking up that was not, again, it's just people took their eye off the ball and see any of this was coming. Now, you've been fiddling with radios as well, Bruce, and there's some, should we or shouldn't we update our Taranis? Is that not the case?
Absolutely, possibly. It depends. It depends where in the world you are. The reason for updating is a very subtle bug that's been affecting people who fly with the EU version of the D16 software. If you're not flying the EU version of the D16 software, don't bother, because it only affects them. And so if you're flying FCC version or flying with the D8 receivers, don't waste your time. Just stick with what you got, because that's what I've been flying, and it has never, ever given me a problem at all. And if it works, I'm not going to fix it.
What is the bug, Bruce? Do you know what it is?
They say uncommanded servo movement, but I have also heard through the back door that it is to do with the listen before you transmit side of things that the EU software has. And there are some situations where it listens, but it doesn't transmit. So you end up with long periods of latency, which are unacceptable if you're flying a model. So yeah, I'm not totally sure, because I can't read German. It's on some German forums, and even Google Translate gets itself tied in a bit of a knot. But suffice to say, if you are flying a high-risk model on the EU software, then update. Otherwise, don't waste your time.
I can't remember what I flashed all of mine to, because it was a few years ago. I can't remember if I got rid of the LBT or not. I'll have to have a look. But again, I haven't updated any firmware on my Taranis for three years. I've just kept it as it is because it works. I still got the first batch of receivers I've had for 3-4 years. I bought like 10. So, you
That's
on my video. My software is dated 2013.
Yeah. It's
the golden rule, though, isn't it? If it works, don't change it.
Yeah, I haven't flown it. To be honest, I don't think I've flown it in 6 months. Because I've been using the Hearlink and everything else. I haven't needed to actually use a standard radio for a while, to be honest. I've been playing with the Sky Drones stuff, which is a 20-kilometer link. I'm going to be doing a video on that shortly, but that isn't RC. That's video and telemetry. So there's no RC.
How's it working for you?
It's so far it's okay. I've had some issues getting it set up, but I think that was my end more than anything else. Because there's no radio element to it, it's PC either side. So you're into the flight controller, and then you're into your laptop.
Oh, it's the curse. It's the curse.
Done any range testing yet? I'm gonna. You're sorry.
You went to sleep again. Just so for the long range stuff, you're going to use the DJI rover for the long range testing, because you can't fly beyond visual line of sight. But I'm sure you're allowed to drive beyond visual line of sight.
I'm going to try and do the same test as I did with Hearlink, in the same location at the same place. That's my 16-kilometer jump. It's about the furthest I've got down with me, so I'm going to give that a test in the same place as well.
How can you do that?
Well, it's on a hill, and it's on another hill. attached
So
to
you're
nothing.
driving. You're not actually flying.
No, I'm literally putting one end at 16 kilometers away from the other, basically, with
You
two
just
people.
get up
Send
Snowdon
it
on
to
the
Nikolai.
railway.
Nikolai, yeah, it's, to be honest, I'm going to try and do some. I have found a 23-kilometer jump, which I can test it on. Again, like, it's very different flying it compared to static test, but for me, it's about, is it capable of doing what they say it's capable of doing out the gate, first of all.
Oh.
Because in that test, yes. You're sorry, Gar?
Someone in that hotel's watching porn.
Yeah.
It can get 16 kilometers, but some guys have struggled to get 1 kilometer on the ground. So at the end of the day, it's entirely dependent on the situation. It really, really is.
I think a lot of just radio installations, and I suspect that's why Nicola has positive reviews of lots of things, because he takes time to install it nicely. A lot of people just sling gear into a fuselage and expect the range, expect it to work as advertised.
I used the highest quality zip ties when I installed mine, and I was using an R9 on the weekend. I flew to the limits of visual line of sight, quote, and then on the way back, I was 200 meters from the transmitter, and it went into failsafe for a second, and then came out again. It got a low RSS. I mean, so it's it's nothing to do with what I did. It was a perfect installation. But there are some, and I'm using the last version of the R9 software before they went to Access, so everything was current.
Did you have the correct frequency zip ties? I mean, it's no good if you had
I've got the EU white ones.
They have to be ESD ones.
Yeah, the SEC ones are black, aren't they?
Yeah, you have to be ESD ones, and you've got to count the number of little lines on it to make sure they're not at the same wavelength as the frequency that you're transmitting on.
Exactly. That's it. And I use a compressed air nail gun to put the receiver on the side, so that's fine.
Yeah. Otherwise,
imperial or metric nails?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I do think you see some pretty shabby installations that people are surprised that don't go anywhere.
Yeah, when I did the healing test on the mountain, it was the perfect scenario in the sense of the antenna layout was absolutely spot on. The location gaps was complete line of sight. It was over water, so it allowed me to test the best possible outcome. Now, does that mean everyone's going to get 20 kilometers? No. Does it mean or if you look at something off the shelf, the Mavic I think says 7 kilometers in FCC or 4 kilometers in CE. It will do that in the right conditions. Yeah, in the wrong conditions, you'd be lucky to get 400 meters. It's not the equipment's fault. It's the reality of radio. Anyone who spent their childhood like I did, shoving up 18-foot Yagi beams on rotators and shouting CQDX.
Man, I just had a crystal set. You were so lucky.
Yeah, 163 Delta Tango comes to light off the top of my head. It's been a while. I remember when USB meant something very, very different.
Oh yes, yeah, indeed. Very much so. Yes, very much. Yeah, well, that's sort of a good grounding and all that sort of the world. You used to teach it all, didn't you, Bruce? So know this stuff. You do have to think about it a little bit. So what other news have we seen this week? What other happenings have occurred?
I've seen a couple of interesting ones. One is Autel have announced the delay of the Evo 2.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah.
Something smelled off about this, and I, to be honest, I didn't pick up on this considering I have been giving them a kick in for the last week or so. They got another one coming yet because I found something else slightly underhanded. But what I didn't notice was they said they were going to release a drone at the end of January, and if you think about it, that never made sense for a Chinese company because they're in the middle of the new year, and to release a product, it would have to have been ready by about the 14th, 15th of Jan at the very latest. So
that was the coronavirus.
I don't think they were ever ready. But they've delayed it for 2 months. What they're saying is dealers get their hands on it in February, and then users will be able to order from March. Okay, look, it's not anything particularly unusual. DJI delayed the Mavic, both of them. Everyone has delayed one way or another over the last few years. So it's nothing you can kick them about too much in reality.
But Well, it's a thing of reality. That's what I immediately thought. Was how close to going was it actually?
I don't know. You know, the interesting thing is if you look at all the reviews, right, there's a load of reviews out there. The 1-inch model is vaporware at this point. It doesn't exist. No one has seen it. So that technically doesn't exist. Some of them I found quite interesting. That there's been a lot not said. Read more into what's not been said than what has been, and I think the guys have probably picked up on some things that they didn't want to say purely because it's probably not ready. And the reality is they've not wanted to give them a kick in on it, but clearly they're behind. Clearly they are very, very behind. I don't buy the bug thing in the firmware. If it was a flight bug, you could fix that, and you don't take all the products off the shelf to update the firmware. That's not how the world works. Every item you buy today needs a firmware update out of the box. Whether you buy you buy a laptop, it needs updates. You buy a phone, it needs updates. We expect to buy something now and have it update itself. So that's not a biggie for them. But it's been delayed.
It was that guy ragging on about their 8K camera that upset them, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they had to stop the production line and everything for that. Yeah. That's what they had to do. SkySight RPAS. Saskatoon, if I get that wrong. Canada wants to control airspace over the city. And there's been a few places in East Devon, and I grew up in East Devon, partly, until we moved back over the right side of the border, back into Somerset. We lived temporarily down there, and it is a county full of duffers, but they want to charge people to fly from council land if you're flying commercially. That sort of a thing, which is. But
interesting. Did you see, Gary? They're not saying fly from their land; they're saying fly over their land, which they don't have the right to say.
They got no control of the airspace.
No, exactly.
Like the city in Canada, wouldn't it? Would have no control of its airspace.
Yeah.
And in the update to the legislation that's happened in the UK, which is giving the police more powers, also sidling in there and being noticed by other aviation groups, it's not only that. It's giving large airports more of a say over how controlled airspace is constructed. So unfortunately, I think they're sliding that in there, a little bit of extra controlled airspace and the ability to
once again, New Zealand leads the way. The CIA have ceded control of airspace for drones to property owners. You can't fly over someone's property without their permission. So in effect, the councils or people in this country can say you can't fly over my property unless you pay me money. I think that's ridiculous.
It is. It's interesting because it's clearly written by someone who hasn't got a clue what they're talking about. You look at it and just go, okay. And it's funny. I've heard a number of stories about councils employing these experts for their drone legislation and stuff, and these guys just don't have a clue. Absolutely don't have a clue. Cardiff Council is renowned to have someone, I believe, who's given commercial operators a huge amount of hassle over the years. There's other areas who've had problems as well. So it's concerning that councils aren't actually understanding what it means. You've got port authorities who are basically taking the London Port Authority wording, which was wrong when it was written, and they're basically putting their name across the top of it and says you're not allowed to fly over the port. And you're like, well, hold on a minute, you can't say that. And then, as Gary says, we've got the second reading of this damn legislation that's going through, which it's going to happen. This is entirely outside of our control. Brexit sort of kicked it into the long grass, but unfortunately, Baroness Veer. She is not letting this one go, and has been quite vocal on this subject, as I understand it, and that's where, this will happen. The police powers will happen. I'll be honest, the way it's going, I am severely tempted to move away from aerial vehicles and more to ground-based, just because of the way it's going. You're almost at the stage of, why do I want this hassle? That's what you've got to ask yourself.
You want knife-based vehicles because they're very poorly regulated.
Yeah, and that's the sad thing about this. Okay, I'm never going to give up, but the reality is, it does make you think every time you want to get an aircraft out. Oh, yeah.
Well, my oldest is over there now, living with my brother, and he's finally seen the light, and he's got himself some model gliders and some other model airplanes. And it's an absolute hassle for it. It's not an absolute. It's just a pain in the. It's just a pain. It's ridiculous. Why does he need to, register and do all these things? And of course, this is the other thing that the CAA, government press release revealed was, as we suspected, only about 80 or 81,000. I can't remember how many people have actually registered. So what's that? We reckon that's about 90,000 people short of what they need to keep the price the same. Didn't they need 170k people?
Yeah,
it's 75,000 people too many. Only the PCFOs or whatever they are need to register. Everyone else should have stood firm, stood strong, held out. But no.
Yeah, and that is the irony. Is we were talking about this before we come on. Can't really sit back and do nothing because we're legally required to comply with the law, especially if you're operating commercially, and they've already got me on one list, so I got no choice. But for everyone else, as you say, we're in the middle of winter. Why rush out and do this? I did it on the last day as well. I did it on the last day. I was in no rush to do it. It was just
I've spoken to some English people, and the reasons, justifications for registering have been long and many, including, if I wasn't registered, I wouldn't have insurance. And I said, okay, when was the last time you claimed on your insurance? And if you're not flying, you don't need insurance. And if you're flying sub 250, the chances you're going to actually cause an injury to somebody flying in a grassy field in the middle of nowhere is pretty much zero. That's why insurance companies charge you, a few quid for millions of dollars of cover.
I suspect this integration with the BMFA was a very clever move and has got them a long way along that. I suspect if there wasn't that integration at registration, I would wonder how many, because it all tied in the same time as your renewal, and they made it very easy for people to be able to do it all at the same time. So I do wonder if we didn't have this integration, how many would have actually gone out and done it?
Well, I know a number of people that are BMFA members have actually stood up and said, I'm rejoining the BMFA, but I'm not registering through you. Do not pass my details on and I will not pay you the money. And it's had to be accepted because that's their right.
Yeah, I've not rejoined the BMFA this year. I've joined FPV UK. I've decided to go that way, and we mentioned it earlier, is they've almost just let it happen. They've just let it happen, and I honestly think they thought this won't affect us. Don't worry about it. It's all for those nasty drones. Don't worry about it. And I just think it's passed them by, and suddenly, again, they do benefit from it because at the end of the day, if people are going to go to their sites to fly, then they benefit because they get more members. So unfortunately, a lot of these bigger clubs, they're not. It's in their benefit, some of this regulation. It really is.
Only in the short term, though. It's only short-term benefit because, as I said before, if you're under 18, you can't even legally be the operator of a model of any kind unless it's sub 250 grams. So there's so many disincentives for young people to get into the hobby now that when all these old grey people from the BMFA age out, that's it. There is no more. Those their interests are gone because the membership will decline. It'll age out. And they're not thinking far enough ahead. I guess if you're nearing the end of your useful life, you don't have to think far ahead. We need more young people, and they're actually coming from the point of view that, well, I want to continue this hobby for decades, so we have to look further ahead. It's so sad that we see that so many of these organisations are basically manned by, people in their Zimmer frames. But I guess they're the only people who have the time to do it.
Look, I'll be honest. I was a member of the BMFA, but I wasn't a member of any affiliate club because the local two clubs didn't want me to be a member. The second I walked in with a drone, they weren't interested.
That, though.
It's not it's obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, and because they don't want drone pilots, they absolutely hate them for the most part. The traditional fixed wing clubs, and it is very much the elderly statesman. We've been doing this for 30 years. Unless I've carved it out of balsa, it's not a model. And
but even within those clubs, you'll get the guys that's no. Today's a nitro day only. No electric allowed here today, or this, that, or the other. Or you go to a soaring site. I've done it. I've got into trouble once doing that. I went to a soaring site and I just had I can't remember what something I had was something with the propeller on it, and I was just chucking it out, not using the motor. It was no. So even there's the super. What I'm trying to say is there's super clicks even within. In the clubs, they are funny, and they do mostly consist of turning up, getting out a table, so laying everything out, fettling with an engine for about 3 hours, and then putting everything back in the back of the car and going off again. It's escaping the wife on a Sunday for a few hours generally.
Yeah.
But
you know, I remember I was invited to go to one of the local clubs to sit down and talk to them about becoming a member. I walked in, they asked me to bring some equipment. It was an hour's bloodbath of me getting torn apart on how everything I know is wrong. And it was, don't call us, we'll call you. And you just come away from it going, really? Do you know what I mean? You know, I left the fixed wing gear at home. I brought what you asked me to bring. Do you know what I mean? And you just, unfortunately, it's sad like that. And over the years, whilst I've always been a member of the BMFA, I think it's probably time to let that go now. And you know, Simon's doing great work with FPV UK, and they're trying to rattle some doors and open things and make things more transparent. So, you know, that's where I'm putting my money.
The thing is that the English should be looking to the USA, because the USA, they basically laid down an accepted registration. Yeah, it's all fine. That's got only, John Taylor was the only guy that stood up and said, no, this is not good enough. And so the UK is doing the same thing. Now look what's happened in the USA. They have brought out a new set of rules to basically wipe the hobby off the face of the planet, because Google spent, was it $12 million lobbying last year? I think it was $20 million the year before. These are the people making the rules. It's the Googles, the Amazons, and the rule makers, just people in between. And if you just lay back and say, we accept whatever you throw at us, they go, oh, that's easy enough. Let's take the money from Google and just do what they want. No one's really complaining. And it's the thin end of the wedge on the greasy buttocks. And before you know it, you're gone. And it's going to happen around the world, because this airspace is now getting so valuable. We don't want amateurs, even in grassy fields, messing it up for us. And the only way to do it is to stand strong when these proposals are made, not complain after they're passed into effect. You'll never get them repealed.
Yeah, you know.
I was just going to say, it's also quite interesting that so we've riled about the 400-foot bit, and they're now wanting, another one of my nerdy hobbies and passing interests, is high altitude helium balloons above flight level 660. Now, traditionally, above flight level 660, there are no flight levels. That's it. You're off. You're out of the system. You're not in the system anymore. But they're now lobbying for airways and airspace above flight level 660 as well. So they're going to have this weird sort of up to 1,000 feet, big gap, flight level 660 and above, and they want control over that. And that's for the high altitude persistent systems, you know, the kinetic Zephyr style, slow moving high altitude radio relay, and the Google Loon sort of stuff. And
Nicholas planes.
And Nicholas planes, of course. But it's very interesting. So they've gone kind of for the both bits. They're generally not really interested in that, and they're you know, airliners aren't there, so, and airliners don't fly that low. Helicopters do, but airliners don't fly that low, so we don't need that bottom bit. And they're trying to monetize the bits that nobody's been using and own it. And unfortunately, aviation authorities are sort of being very submissive about it. I say, yeah, all right, then that's a good idea. No, great, carry on. Well, anyway, sorry, that's a bit of a sideways rant, but I just think it's interesting that it's both ends of that airspace. So maybe we should be asking for a bit like 10,000 to 20,000, you know, that the airliners don't really use. I don't know.
Trouble is, we have to transit through manned aviation airspace to get there, so that then becomes an issue.
Oh no, we've got to travel through Amazon space first to get there. That's what we're going to go through. But no, there's definitely moves. You know, if they can lean on this community hard and break stuff like they've managed to, and with this stuff that's happened in the UK in the last couple of days, moving this, because there's other bits in this legislation. It's not just the shock horror bits that we'll see from the model flying. The airspace stuff is very interesting, because that's going to affect general aviation and gliding and balloons and all that sort of thing. And I can see it being the next push. All right, well, we've moved that lot out of the way. They were easy. Right, let's get on to the next lot. Anyway, conspiracy time for me. Don Joyce 660 for Elon Musk rocket lines. Yeah, and yeah, all sorts of things. But yeah. Sorry, someone else talk. I've ranted.
Well, Elon Musk, he doesn't need that space, because he's going to put 1 million people on Mars by 2050. Dreaming.
Well, that's okay. Then he can take up all the people that really don't like those damn drones that can go live up
and
there.
NASA are flying a drone on Mars. I mean, Mars is the next place to go. It'll be the MMFA. who'll take care of all the model flying on Mars.
Mars model flying. Quick, get the website, get it all signed up quickly. So what other ranty things we've seen this week? I don't know. So there's the UK. We've talked about that. We've talked about the terrible helicopter. What else has happened out there?
That woman followed by a drone. That was so scary. So scary. And also in the USA, despite the best efforts of local and federal resources, they still haven't been able to track down those drones that are flying over Colorado. I mean, seriously?
They've given up, haven't they? And I think the Colorado drones, or at least one of them, and what that lady saw is probably exactly the same thing, wasn't it? Some sort of star.
Yeah, Venus or something in the night sky. It's like, but I mean, seriously, if that's how good they are, what difference is drone ID going to make? You can fly without drone ID. They'll never catch you because they can't be bothered or they're incompetent.
I see the flight test FTCA, Flight Test Community Association, seems to be moving on, but I'm quite surprised, Josh, just in case you do watch this, that you're not putting that out on your main channel. I'm not quite sure why there's been a separation of powers with this. Maybe
it's almost like they need to be seen to be doing something, but they don't want anyone seeing it.
Yes. Oh, I'm glad you said that, and I didn't. You could be. Yes, you could have a point there. But yeah,
because remember, they did originally come out in favour of electronic ID. That they were all proponents for it. Yes, this is great. This will protect the hobby. So I call me a cynic, but as I say, I put the call out for various organisations to work with me on this, and so we can coordinate our resources. The only ones that have actually coordinated with me so far are the FPV Freedom Coalition, the commercially oriented entities like Flight Test, which is a business, and like the AMA, which, despite what it claims, is a business. They just want to go their own way. They don't want to be involved with other people. They want to be able to perhaps say, we did it, or perhaps they want to have some extra control that they wouldn't get in a coordinated situation where they had to actually work with other people. I don't know what's going on. Josh should be on every platform possible to promote the reactions to this NPRM, but he's not on here. I mean, I'm going on Ken Heron this week. I'm going with Michael Rollins next week. I'm trying to get awareness out there every way I can and to get people coordinated. AMA, it has its YouTube channel. Flight Test, they have their YouTube channel. And that seems to be it. I mean, why aren't they spreading far and wide? Do they not know how social media works?
Do we know the number of comments yet? Has it gone over 10,000 yet?
I don't know.
I don't know. Last time I looked at it, it was creeping up. But what have we got? About a month? I can't remember. Is it another month to run?
March the 2nd it closes. But the thing is that even if they get 20,000, when you compare that to a population of 320 million, it's nothing. 20,000 votes, even a single senator could afford to lose those, or a single politician can afford to lose all those votes. They wouldn't give a damn. It doesn't make any difference. What they can't afford to lose is the holiday in the Bahamas paid for by the Google lobbyist.
And Don Joyce, very good comment there. Have you picked his day yet for the Global Drone and RC Aircraft Day?
No, but there is some other crowd that is looking at doing one on the 29th of February, but I think that's a little bit too soon. I think we need to spread that out a bit. And also, since we're not going to really change the FAA's perspective by having a big public day, they don't give a damn about that. They've made their mind up. We need to change the politicians' perspective. So we probably want to choose something that's a little bit more between seasons, so that there's more sunlight in both the northern and southern hemispheres, and it's more amenable to flying, someday in autumn here and spring in the north. So I've probably drifted out past the end, or maybe towards the end of March. Also brings it close to the point where the politicians have to stop and think about this whole thing. So I've given up on changing the FAA's mind. They're not going to change their mind because they're bureaucrats. They know what's best for everybody. And so it's the politicians.
When's Easter this year?
Is
that how it's about the back of March?
It's usually the end of March, isn't it, or early April? Yeah. Don't know.
Yeah, because that would be a good when people.
Depends on the phase of the moon. If there's is there a full moon at Easter or a new moon? I can't remember.
I don't know. I know. I'm always get confused. I never understand all of this, and it's just the wife tells me it's Easter, and that's that. As with everything in life, I'm fully informed of what's going on by
people have said to me, oh, we can't fly at night, it's not legal. And I said, well, it doesn't matter, fly inside, get a tiny walk, fly inside, fly in your carport or your garage. As long as you're flying, that's the only thing that matters. Doesn't matter where.
Well, and I think I don't know if you picked it up, Ian. I think I've seen a little bit, some people are postulating there's a little bit of mission creep from the CAA saying perhaps they do have jurisdiction over indoor flight.
Yeah. there's a lot creeping out at the moment, and you've got all of the NQEs who are now in the process of becoming RAEs. If you get to keep your permissions, I froze again. So there's a huge amount going on with that at the moment, and as you say, there's been a little bit of hint that perhaps indoor flight could be under their jurisdiction. The problem with the CAA is they don't seem to know what the hell they want at times, because one second they're saying, don't worry, nothing's going to change, everything's fine. And then suddenly the NQEs are being told something different, and then users are being told something different. I mean, at times it almost feels like both sides are being played, but it's a weird period because all the NQEs are being turned to RAEs. And until that happens, we don't really know where the land lies. We don't even know if the PFCO will exist after the middle of the year. You know, we know things are changing, but we've not been informed of what's going to happen.
And that's why the people have to stand up to the authorities in the UK, because they think they're safe now that there's registrations coming. But in 6 months' time, anything could happen. And if you've already opened the door and said, we're easy pickings, they'll just walk all over you. Unless you put up a really concerted, solid fight and resist unreasonable change, then they take it as read that anything we say you will do, so we'll just do anything we want. I'm so disappointed in the UK.
You might have seen other Ian, UAV Hive has put out a call to action. He needs a bit of a help with some freedom of information requests. I don't want to say too much now because I know a tiny bit of it and I can't say too much, and it involves Gatwick, but it is amazeballs, and that will help no end. If you can find on Twitter the other Ian, UAV Hive, and give him a hand with some freedom of information requests in England. So he's getting a bit worried he's not getting responses now because he's putting so many in. so that's such as.
Oh, I didn't know they had the option of ignoring them. That's a good piece of legislation.
I think they've got the option of what do they say? They say it takes too much time. They just they skew the results by saying it'll take too long for us to do that. So you've actually got to break your FOAs down into tiny single word requests or 1 or 2 words at very specific dates, chunk them down really small, and then they'll do them. Otherwise, they'll just say, "No, sorry, it's going to take too long. I'm not going to do it." So that's what. But no, I can't. It's worth it. It's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it. Trust me on this one, dear reader. Trust me.
I gather in the USA, people have made similar information requests for the risk assessment the FAA is going to use to back up their NPRM, and to date there has been no response.
We have, when the Patrick tended, I don't know, Patrick's probably gone now. He puts the FOAs in there, and I think we've got some outstanding about 7 years old now. So sometimes
they must be taking a very long time.
Yeah, you must have asked some very, very long words. But we found out quite a few things with FOAs. It is a useful thing. Now, Mike Leisure's saying Purdue Griffin in a sort of a. I don't understand that. Does anyone understand that comment in the comments? Let me put it up here.
Is it some mythical creature?
I don't know. Yeah, well, yes. It's beyond me. So I'm not quite sure what that reference is to, Mike. So if you want to unpack that a bit, you're very welcome to.
Drone Racer, UK YouTubers use the excuse, you've got to register because I'm a YouTuber. No hint of making a stand.
You don't have to register. You say, look, I found this SD card and what was on it. And you put it on your YouTube channel. That's what
I've not seen anyone comment on that specifically. You know, I've been fairly clear on my stance, but I'm backed up against the wall, frankly. They've literally got me on this one. But yeah, I've not seen anyone else really comment on it, unless I've missed something on that. Drone Racer, I haven't seen anyone.
But I think you're in for at least a doubling of the price of the. It was annual, wasn't it? That fee, or was it every 3 years?
Yeah, no. Every year you got to do the registration. I've even forgotten what they're actually called now. You've got your ID and your flyer ID, your pilot ID and your flyer ID. The flyer ID lasts 3 years, your pilot ID lasts 1 year, basically. So, but you don't pay for the flyer ID. That's the one you get from doing the test. So once you've done the test, that lasts 3 years.
Okay.
But that's free.
All right.
Okay.
It's going to double next year. It's going to double in price if they don't get, or fail, double or fail. There wasn't as
yeah.
Go on, mate.
I was just going to say, I don't know Painless. He's got a good channel. He puts a huge amount of stuff out. I think YouTubers are in a difficult position with this in some ways as well. Look, there's a very borderline line for a UK YouTuber whether you should be a PFCO or not because of the contribution aspect. So at the end of the day, for them to register, there are valid reasons why they might want to do that to be able to continue what they're doing. If you're not wanting to get someone knock on the door and shut down. Now, if you're an individual and you say, I'm not registering, I don't care what you do, that's brilliant. But for some, that isn't always an option, just like a PFCO, just like some of the others.
It is always an option. It is, because there are so many ways around it. Like if you're a YouTuber, as I say, if I wanted to put flight footage up, I'd say, I got this SD card in the mail. I don't know who it's from. This is what was on it. And there we go. There's someone flying, because CAA have already said it's very difficult to get a prosecution from video because we can't prove who was flying at the time. So you utilize that to your strength. And as far as making money out of videos, well, you're making money from video editing, not from flying, from video editing.
It's locked territory in the UK.
If you film someone at the local aero club flying their Cessna 172 and you put it on YouTube and monetize it, are they flying commercially?
Technically, in the UK, we would be, if the purpose of the flight was to receive any form of benefit, then yes, it would be deemed as commercial. So if you take a YouTuber, for instance, so did he go to the field with the intent of putting that footage online and monetizing the video? Now, if you were to actually say, no, I just filmed it, and then afterwards I chose to use that, on one occasion, you would probably get away with that. On 10 occasions, you'd probably get away with it. But there is a point where they're going to go, hold on a minute. You know you're going to end up using that footage online, therefore, and it is a weird one, you know. I understand your point, Bruce. I 100% agree. Unfortunately, those, you know, I think Painless is well over 100,000 subs. He's in a position where, do you want to be seen to be going against the law publicly like that? And I you know, only he can make that decision at the end of the day.
I know only he can do it, but it's a matter of principle. And in the case of, like, for example, the ironclad test would be, would you have made that flight anyway, even if you weren't putting your video up? And I would say all my flights I would make anyway, because I enjoy the hobby. It is a pastime for me. And the fact I put videos on YouTube and that YouTube decides to monetize them and send me money, that's completely irrelevant, because I would still be doing those flights. And so I would take it to court. I mean, I'm a pretty principled guy. I'd say, right, I'm going to take it to court. We'll crowdfund my defense. People are anti-up money. Let's get a precedent there. Let's challenge the authority of the aviators to make this imposition on us. But no one's challenging it. It's just laying back and taking it, you know. Unless you challenge these things, then you'll get your rights completely ripped apart.
The problem is, it is law now, and that's the problem. There is no challenge in this.
Laws, the enforcement of laws is done by precedent. If the courts throw it out, then the law becomes useless, because the precedent has been set and that law has been seen to be unsuitable for purpose. And plenty of cases where laws have actually been set aside because the judges will not enforce them because they're not just and reasonable. So the law may still exist on the statutes, but when it comes to the court case, the lawyers review the precedents and go, well, in this case, X versus Y, so forth, and that becomes the guidance for the judge at the time. So people need to do it. And the beauty is that with social media, with a worldwide community, we can afford to do that. Well, if I stood up to the authorities and went to court, I would probably have no trouble in raising all the money I needed to pay for a damn good lawyer to support me. And that's how we battle these things, even once they've become law.
Surely we should be at the point where, well, we've moaned about these things for enough time, and all the comment making things over the last 5 or 6 years that we've said to people, for goodness sake, at least do something. You know, we could have steered the ship away from this a lot earlier on. So you're saying social media and you'll get the support and all that, and you would, but you're getting the message out, what, 200, 250, quarter of a million, 750,000 people? I don't know how many people you've got now, Bruce, on your channels, and still
Millions.
less than 10,000 people have commented on the current gig. Is this social media thing, is it really that powerful? Is it really making any difference?
It is, but well, it's the only mechanism we've got, because we can't, but the mainstream media will do what it wants to do. It's the only thing we've got, and social media is very pervasive, but you've got to know how to use it, and you've got to leverage it properly. Just because I've got 250,000 subscribers or whatever it is, it doesn't mean that everyone's going to watch my videos. And so I have to make sure that I tell people when they watch my video, tell other people. And people don't seem to work out how to leverage things very well. And it's also, the problem is people have a lot of inertia. They'll just sit back and do nothing until it's too late, which means these things are going to get passed in, but we need then to start taking action to protect our rights in terms of legal precedents, so that when other people get hauled up. But the trouble is, everyone seems to be looking out for themselves, but they're not looking out for the wider community. I put myself up there to protect the hobby. So I'm willing to make personal sacrifices, be it financial, be it my liberty, whatever. I'll make those sacrifices to protect the hobby for future generations. And if other people can't say the same thing, well, they should get out of the pool and take up dominoes or stamp collecting.
But that's the thing. The assertion that there's a community, I think, is the interesting thing. Is there really a community? And Airheaded Aviators quite rightly said not everyone can risk losing money, or risk even that, heaven forbid, some sort of criminal record. As silly as it might sound, it might get you.
But what they can do, they can say, well, I'm not going to fly. I'm going to forsake my own personal gratification for the benefit of the community. I'm not going to fly for the next 6 months if you're in the UK, because it's winter anyway, and we'll see what happens after that. It's a small price to pay to protect the hobby.
Well, then that's our fault. That was a good idea. Other Ian, this Ian, and yourself, and as we were all saying this, it's going to be winter. You don't fly anyway. Don't register until you have to, because you don't have to. This Ian's in, and both Ians are actually in a difficult position because they're PFCOs. But yeah, if that had gone through and only 5,000 or 6,000 people have registered, then perhaps the CAA would be having a completely different think about it now. But they've got 80,000 people through. There was only 6,000 people at Christmas, which was amazing. That should have been peak registration, really. Again,
it just shows what the difference the BMFA and FPV UK being tied into it with the renewals has made.
Yeah. And Don, I see that you fly in winter, and it's kind of, I know, but I think this, I get, and you would fly in England as well, but this was sort of the idea, was that this is a sacrifice, just genuinely put it on the shelf.
I think
I've taken up model yachting instead of model airplane flight to show my protest. This is my new hobby.
I thought it said yodeling.
And it's long range yachting. See, I fly in Wollongong, even though I live in New Zealand. I mean, I yacht in Wollongong.
I think the problem is if someone like Painless made a stand and got done, the chances are he's being done. There's no in between. If they're going to do him, they'll do him, and then and I think it's going to make the situation worse, because at the end of the day, if he gets done, he's going to get fined, and it then puts you in a very difficult position. It's one thing being able to stand up to proposals, but when it is law, we're all in a difficult position now. It is law. We can all sit here and say, I'm not going to fly. That works. I'm 100% with that. Anyone who it doesn't need to fly, don't bloody register. Wait as long as you possibly can. However, it's very difficult to say, go out there and break the law, because that puts everyone in a difficult position, because what you don't want is someone to be fined 4,000 or 5,000. There hasn't been a case yet. And what would happen if we had one of the first cases was, a YouTube channel, and it was all over the news, and it doesn't help either, does it? It goes against us too.
That's how you get the mainstream media involved, and then you've got your chance to say your side of the story. Also, if Painless went out there and he stood up and protested, I'd dip into my pocket to pay his fine, and I'm sure there are thousands of people around the world.
I think we all would, 100%.
Yeah, we all would. And so, it's like, Trappy's a good example. I mean, when he did that flight in the university, the thing is that if you go out there and you do it and you break the law, do it safely, no one gets hurt. It makes a mockery of, you can't do this, it's too dangerous. Well, if everyone's doing it, no one's getting hurt, it makes the law look kind of stupid, doesn't it?
That seems like another time, doesn't it now?
Yeah. This was a problem we had 2 years ago. We did the videos, we had to Save Our Skies, we all pushed it as much as we could. And the reality is, Nothing happened. No one noticed it, and you know, we got steamrolled by the government on it, you know, with the help of a little bit of a fake incident in Gatwick, and you know, it helps the old narrative, didn't it? And it pushed it through. I can't blame anyone for following the law. Everyone's got to make their own choice. What I'd say is, as Bruce has always said,
let's hope Ian's not watching. How many emails happened between government departments in the month around that that incident at Gatwick? How many thousands? Just between the CIA and government departments in a month?
no idea.
Go on, go with a guess.
How many emails? What about it? Or
about it? A bit more than 14. Or do the nearest 10,000.
Okay, 30,000.
Keep going.
Higher, lower.
Yeah, higher.
70,000.
Just a bit lower. But anyway, we'll cap it there. Somewhere between
14.
here and there. But that was in a month. That was between government departments about that. There were lots. And now Ian will shout at me. But there were lots and lots. So we've got to get those FOIAs in, because we've got to get some clever questions in there to reveal what was being said to whom, by and why. But there was a crap load of emails went in a month for that, and as you say, that's the reason I mentioned it. It's perfectly timed skullduggery, as in America. Remote ID, conspiracy theory, fetch tinfoil. Remote ID comes.
Let me quote Thomas Jefferson. If
Yes.
a law is unjust, a man is not only right to disobey it, he is obligated to do so.
Well, there we are.
Learn from your answer. Learn from the history books, children.
But he was. So that's when they were banning kite flying. That was him, wasn't it? Oh no, it was someone else.
Wasn't he the president or something?
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, if they're good enough for the president of the USA, like even Donald Trump, and it's good enough for me.
But it's even that, but there's definitely been those UFO sightings in Colorado or wherever they were. That all remote ID, tick tick tick. Oh, look what's happened. This terrible helicopter crash. Oh, look at all those terrible drones. We've had to create a temporary danger area. First time it's ever happened in the history of historydom, because all those terrible drones were sightseeing on that time to do something about that and get rid of them. Every single excuse has got me down a bit today. All the stuff around that helicopter thing, because it's just pure nonsense, made for the purpose. So yeah, we've got to unearth this agenda. Someone's got to unearth this agenda properly, with evidence, and we'll have a go at it.
Well, if the community had stood up and said, we're not having it, the media would have covered it, the public would be aware. And the thing that really annoys me is you got the AMA and the BMFA all blaming the drone flies. It's all the drone flies' fault. So it was all good till they came along. But they haven't focused on the one key thing. Well, then why aren't you blaming the CAA, the FAA, for not drawing the distinction? It's a simple thing to draw a distinction between a multi-rotor drone and a quarter-scale petrol-powered Spitfire. But they've chosen not to. And that betrays the lie that this is about safety. So the BMFA is too busy blaming people to actually look at the facts and go, oh, actually, we should be doing this. And this is why you need coordination. This is why I've said, I'll put my hand up and say, let's coordinate things. Everyone needs to be singing from the same hymn book, but they're not. They're focusing on the irrelevant details instead of the obvious ones. Why on earth are you punishing the traditional hobby, which has proven safe over many decades, because of the actions of a very, very, very tiny number of people with store-bought drones that don't know what they're doing?
The truth will out. We've got to hope that, haven't you? If you don't hope that as you go through life, then
in the face of bureaucrats, politicians, and the mainstream media, the truth never comes out. We're at war. This is a battle. There's a war going on here, and the first victim of war is truth.
True enough. This is very true.
I'm full of these old sayings. I've got Google.
Yeah, absolutely.
If only they knew they were shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah. Well, we've gone well over the hour again. Let's just quickly call, are there any more for any more? any more stories we can think of. More from the model yachting world next week, we hope. More from Nicola.
I saw one thing very quick. I've been watching Red Cat's stock, who own Rotorite. And that has plummeted to the bottom of everything over the last week. It's been quite interesting because they've been doing quite a lot of media interviews, and I don't pay much attention to the stock prices of companies, but when they bought Rotorite, it sort of rose an eyebrow of, what are they up to here? What's their goal with this? Because, it's a big channel, it's a store, and what I found interesting over the last week is just how low their stock level has been bouncing down to it's on the floor. It got below $1 in the middle of the week, and it's
investors know when you've lost focus, and if you lose focus, they bail.
Yeah, it's interesting, and if you look at the 1 year, at one point they were averaging $5, $6, $7 a share, and now it's down. It was at 82 on the 23rd, 82.82, and it has peaked. It peaked in the middle of the year at $12, but yeah, it's on a massive slide down, and I don't know what the future is for Rotorite. I think in 2 years it won't.
I agree with Ian, even though he's not talking.
No, you lost me then. I stopped again, did I? Yeah, I don't know where. All I said was I don't think Rotorite will exist in 2 years.
No, everyone overhyped the mini quad drone racing market. It was going to be the future. It was going to replace Formula One. It is a small niche market, and there's not going to be a huge amount of money to be made out of it. And I think I've seen this so many times with businesses that start up with an idea and they get funding and they build up and the stock price goes up, and then they realize that their original business plan doesn't hold enough water to keep them buoyant. So they start looking at other options, and I think that's what's happened with Red Cat. They've gone, we'll get Rotorite on board. It'll get us, more public exposure and so forth. But savvy investors realize when a company has lost its focus and it's starting to lose its way, and you don't want money in a business that's like that because they're desperately clinging to straws to try and stay afloat. You want to get out while your stock's still worth something. And maybe that's what's happened with Red Cat.
I thought they bought it in order to use that leverage with the FAA meetings that they go to. Look at our community of ex-people and give themselves a louder voice in the counter-UAS meetings they go to.
But we just agreed that social media doesn't create a community.
It makes you wonder why they bought it. Yeah, it does make you wonder why they bought them, because they bought them as a drone store and a channel. Red Cat sells services. They sell black box services. Well, they're either trying to bank on something around remote ID for FPV drones, and they want to be in the position. But it's a strange point to buy Rotorite. At the end of the day, it's a YouTube channel with a store off the back of it. I
think that. Well, they probably said that we have a connection to 200,000 drone users. Therefore, our technology is going to be a big hit. Yeah,
exactly. And then when you go to that meeting at FAL, wherever, here's our 200,000 users, etc., etc. No, okay, yeah. That was my thought on why that happened. Anyway, right. Well, that was and now Nicola's gone turny circle as well. So that probably is the time, because we can all rush away now and we'll be gone when he comes back. Nicola, thanks. Oh, he's gone away.
Oh, he's already gone.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Free Radical. Enjoy the yachting. Be safe, whatever you're doing, dear viewer. Let's see what this next week brings. I'm sure it'll be loads more nonsense. And we'll see you again, 2100 GMT next week. Look after yourselves. Be safe. Bye-bye. Click the button.
Click the second button.